And a recap that the U.S. and Iran have reached a peace framework agreement to end their months-long military conflict.
Mediator Pakistan says the signing ceremony will be held this Friday in Switzerland. For more insight on the deal struck between the U.S. and Iran, let's speak with Barbara Slavin, a Distinguished Fellow of Middle East and North Africa at the Stimson Center, and she is joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Slavin. So Trump says the deal is complete and has already ordered Hormuz reopened, the blockade lifted. But even though the formal signing isn't until Friday, how confident are you that the deal will hold by then?
Well, I'm crossing my fingers, but obviously, given what we've seen over the last 4 months, it's not entirely clear that it will hold. And of course, I'm worried very much about the Israelis trying to jeopardize this. According to what we've seen, Lebanon is part of this agreement, but the Israelis, as we know, have been attacking that country and hit Beirut just a few hours ago. The Iranians were prepared to retaliate for that and then were persuaded not to. So again, I think everyone is hopeful, but Israel is a potential spoiler in this, very much so.
Yeah, just speaking of Israel, does Mr. Netanyahu still have the leverage to shape or derail this deal at the stage?
I think Donald Trump has told him no. We will see if he listens. There is a lot of grumbling going on. If you're looking at the Israeli media, a lot of people there are not happy and have the sense that this is ending not on good terms for Israel or for the United States. Iran is declaring victory. Now, I don't think there have been any winners out of this war. But the rhetoric from Iran is extremely triumphant, that they have forced the United States to back down through their control over the Strait of Hormuz. And of course, this is just an MOU. There are no concessions as far as the nuclear program contained in the MOU, just a promise of future talks about Iran's nuclear program. And there's no reference to Iran's missiles or drones or its support for groups like Hezbollah, which of course is very upsetting to the Israelis.
And I want to ask you, Ms. Slavin, about the location of this signing on Friday. Does holding it in Switzerland give both sides diplomatic cover because it's neutral ground? It gives no side a chance for a victory lap. Maybe no one looks like they've conceded under pressure, especially Iran.
Well, Geneva, Switzerland in general, is a traditional site for these kinds of arms control agreements, if you will, peace agreements. The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Obama-era agreement that Trump withdrew from in 2018, was also finalized in Switzerland, I believe, although there were negotiations in Vienna. Perhaps the signing was in Vienna, but there were a lot of negotiations also in Switzerland. So not surprising, the Iranians have a big delegation there. Of course, they don't have any diplomats in the United States and haven't for 47 years. So also Trump will be in Europe for the G7. So if he wants to attend in person, I suppose he can. He'll be in France, or it may be J.D. Vance who participates.
Okay. And back to the nuclear story, President Trump saying that Iran will not obtain nuclear weapons, but this emerging framework appears to leave those hardest nuclear details to follow on talks. Can you tell us about the nuclear loopholes here that you believe could still scupper this deal?
Well, for the time being, Iran is not in a position to produce a nuclear weapon. Much of its infrastructure was destroyed a year ago when the U.S. and Israel last started a war with Iran. And its highly enriched uranium, most of it is still buried under rubble and difficult to extricate. So there is no immediate threat. There wasn't an immediate threat when the United States and Israel went to war with Iran back in February. Iran has pledged repeatedly that it will not develop nuclear weapons. There's always been skepticism about those pledges because of unanswered questions about the program. But there is nothing new in that pledge. It was in the preamble to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action that Trump quit. As far as what will finally be negotiated, again, we do not know if Iran will continue to enrich uranium, will certainly demand that it has the right to enrich uranium, what the provisions will be. And before we see details like that, there's no way to judge whether this is better or worse than the Obama-era deal.
About the Strait of Hormuz, Ms. Slavin, President Trump says it will reopen on Friday after the deal is signed. For Asian economies and for Singapore, for example, should that be read as genuine or only a temporary reduction in risk? And what would markets need to see before treating Hormuz as safe again?
Well, I think what we've learned from this war is that Iran has the ability to shut down the strait. And it can always do that again if it is not happy with the amount of compensation it is going to get. We haven't talked about unfreezing of assets. The Iranians are also talking about a reconstruction fund of $300 billion in addition to some $24 billion in unfrozen assets. So if the Iranians feel that they're not getting what they expect, they can shut it down again. And I think a lot of shipping companies are going to be cautious about trying to return to the pre-war status quo because they know this. They're going to be looking for alternative means. And I think the insurance rates will remain rather high until we see whether this ceasefire actually is real and enduring.
Mr. Trump is obviously selling this as a historic breakthrough, but as you mentioned, what's actually new versus what's a return to baseline. What's the cost of getting here worth the war?
No. No one won this war. I mean, thousands of people were killed, billions of dollars in damage to not just Iran, but the economies of the Gulf Cooperation Council states. Tremendous damage to countries like the United Arab Emirates. They've seen their entire economic model threatened by this war. The Saudis have had to cut back. The Qataris lost. There were attacks on their natural gas facilities. Bahrainis, Kuwaitis, you name it. So no one won this war. I think if anything good comes of it, it may be that it has finally discredited the so-called military option as a way of dealing with proliferation concerns about Iran. It didn't work. Many of us said it would not work. And now I think the evidence is very clear. But of course, Trump is still threatening to return to military action if somehow this doesn't satisfy him. And he's going to get a lot of criticism, not just from Israel, but from neoconservatives and Iran hawks in U.S. politics. So it will be interesting to see how he navigates that.
Okay, great to hear your thoughts on this. Barbara Slavin, Distinguished Fellow, Middle East and North Africa at the Stimson Center. Thank you for joining us.